Kevin Durant, three of the NBA's greatest scorers, three stories of individual success. Together in New York, the promise was a dynasty. But what we got was, well, one of the biggest what-ifs in basketball history. Today, we're breaking down how the Brooklyn Nets super team, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden became one of the league's biggest disappointments. Let's dive in. Kevin Durant, a transcendent talent, a scoring machine with the length of a center and the handle of a guard. Drafted by the Seattle Supersonics and quickly becoming the face of the Oklahoma Thunder, Kevin Durant carved his name into the NBA elite with unstoppable offensive prowess. He earned an MVP in 2014, consistently finished among the league's top scorers, and formed a fearsome trio with Russell Westbrook and James Harden. But despite all the talent and all the hype, the Thunder couldn't get over the hump. A painful Game 7 loss to the Warriors in the 2016 Western Conference Finals became a turning point. In a move that shocked the basketball world, Durant joined the very team that had denied him, the Golden State Warriors. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Fans and analysts alike called it the weakest move by a superstar in NBA history. Kevin Durant went from beloved star to basketball villain almost overnight. But on the court, dominance. In Golden State, he won back-to-back championships, earning 2 Finals MVPs and proving he was more than just a passenger on the Warriors super team. Still, the validation felt incomplete. Internal tension with Draymond Green and a desire to lead his own team, not just succeed in a ready-made dynasty, started to grow. Then came the Achilles tear in the 2019 Finals, a devastating injury, a cruel pause. As Golden State's run started to crumble, Durant looked east. A new chapter, a new mission. Brooklyn. He was ready to build a legacy on his own terms, far from the shadows of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Kyrie Irving. If Durant is a sniper, Kyrie is a sorcerer, a ball-handling wizard, a shot creator, a player whose game is poetry in motion. His rise began in Cleveland, where he was the young prodigy handed the keys to a struggling franchise. Then came LeBron James's return in 2014, and together they created one of the most iconic duos in NBA history. The 2016 Finals sealed Kyrie's legend. His clutch three-pointer in Game 7 became an immortal moment in basketball lore, delivering the Cavaliers their first-ever championship and completing a historic 3-1 comeback against the 73-win Warriors. But for Kyrie, glory came with an itch. He didn't want to be Robin, he wanted to be Batman. The desire to lead his own team pushed him to Boston, where he hoped to elevate the Celtics to championship contention. On paper, it was the perfect fit. In reality, it was a turbulent chapter. Locker room friction, leadership struggles, and playoff disappointment defined his time in green. Boston never embraced him, and by the time 2019 arrived, Kyrie was ready to move on again. This time, the move wasn't just about basketball. It was personal. In 2019, Kyrie and Durant, close friends off the court, decided to team up and take their talents to Brooklyn. The Nets, once an afterthought, were now the most talked-about franchise in the league overnight. A fresh start, a blank canvas. Brooklyn was no longer just a borough, it was a battleground for redemption and redefinition. But their first year together, a waiting game. The 2019-2020 season was mostly theoretical. Kevin Durant spent the year rehabbing from his Achilles injury, his return deliberately cautious. Kyrie, meanwhile, showed flashes of brilliance, like his 50-point opening night performance, but was quickly derailed by injury after injury, managing to appear in just 20 games. Without their two stars, the Nets leaned on grit and chemistry. Players like Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and Joe Harris carried the load, playing inspired basketball and sneaking the team into the playoffs. But without Kevin Durant and with Kyrie sidelined, the Nets were quickly swept in the first round. It wasn't unexpected. What mattered wasn't what they did in 2020, but what was coming in 2021. Because that next season was supposed to be the real beginning, the real debut. Durant would return, Kyrie would be healthy. And if that wasn't enough, something even bigger was about to happen. And what a season it was! Kevin Durant returned from one of the most feared injuries in sports, the ruptured Achilles tendon. For many athletes, it's the end of dominance. For Kevin Durant, it looked like a pause. He came back not just ready, but electric. Smooth as ever, deadly as always. Pull-ups in transition, mid-range assassinations, towering blocks. He wasn't just Kevin Durant back. Kevin Durant was back to being Kevin Durant. Meanwhile, the Nets made a surprising yet bold decision. Steve Nash, a two-time MVP, but with zero coaching experience, was named head coach. This wasn't a front office whim. Reports swirled that Nash had been handpicked by the superstar duo Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It was a high-risk, high-reward move. Nash brought vision, composure, and trust from two of the most enigmatic stars in the league. Brooklyn was already buzzing, but they weren't done. Then the bomb dropped. January 13th, 2021. In a blockbuster four-team trade, James Harden, the Beard, the 2018 MVP, a man who averaged 36 points in a season and redefined isolation scoring, was headed to Brooklyn. A player who led the league in scoring and assists, a generational offensive engine, and now he was joining two other generational offensive weapons. But the price? Astronomical. 4 first-round picks, 4 pick swaps, young talents, depth gone. The Nets had mortgaged their future for the ultimate gamble: win now or bust. In an instant, the Brooklyn Nets weren't just a playoff team. They were a super team. The new Kevin Durant BIG3 had been formed. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. 3 of the most gifted scorers and playmakers in NBA history, all in their prime, all on the same team. The media went into a frenzy. Vegas moved Brooklyn to title favorites. Fans either dreamed of domination or feared it. And when they first hit the floor, showtime. In Harden's debut game, Kevin Durant dropped 42 points in one of the smoothest scoring displays of the season. Harden, a vintage triple-double, 32 points, 14 assists, 12 rebounds. The chemistry? Instant. The offense? Unstoppable. The message to the league was loud and clear. If these 3 are on the floor together, you can't guard them. But there was a problem. A quiet one. One that would grow louder with time. The problem wasn't how good they were when they played together. It was how rarely they would play together at all. On paper, the Brooklyn Nets were a nightmare matchup for every team in the league. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden weren't just all-stars. They were bucket-getting savants with playoff experience, MVP trophies, and highlight reels that broke the internet. But basketball isn't played on paper. It's played over 82 games. It's played through injuries, egos, pandemics, and off-court drama. And for the Nets, the dream quickly became a delicate balancing act. Despite having arguably the most potent trio assembled in a generation, the 3 of them shared the court in only 8 regular season games. 8. That number became a symbol of what could have been. Injuries began to pile up. Harden, usually an Iron Man, started dealing with nagging hamstring issues. Kevin Durant, still managing his body after the Achilles tear, missed chunks of time. And then there was Kyrie Irving, the most mercurial of the three. His absences weren't always explained. Sometimes it was a personal reason. Other times it was just silence. And then the pandemic changed everything. As the COVID-19 vaccine became widely available, the NBA adopted new health protocols. New York City implemented a mandate. Unvaccinated players could not participate in home games. And Kyrie? He refused to take the vaccine. His stance wasn't just personal, it became political, polarizing, and loud. It sparked debates on freedom, responsibility, and team sacrifice. This wasn't just a health issue, it was a chemistry killer. With Kyrie sidelined for home games, the Nets were left juggling inconsistent lineups. The team couldn't build rhythm. Practices lacked continuity. Trust, something fragile even in the best locker rooms, began to erode. And yet, when they did play, it was beautiful. Kyrie was still a wizard with the ball, slicing through defenses, hitting impossible shots, finishing with either hand under the rim like a magician pulling rabbits out of hats. Durant was clinical, calm, and lethal. Harden ran the offense with masterful control, dictating pace like a symphony conductor with a beard. The Nets finished the season second in the Eastern Conference despite the chaos. That's how good they were. That's how overwhelming the individual talent was. Their offensive rating was elite. Their shot creation was unmatched. Their highlights were everywhere. But underneath the surface, things were beginning to crack. Reporters began whispering about locker room tension. Steve Nash was praised in public, but questioned in private. Harden seemed frustrated. Kevin Durant tried to stay above the fray, but even he couldn't mask the uncertainty that was infecting the team's foundation. Still, fans and analysts believed if they can just be healthy for the playoffs, if Kyrie can play, if Harden's hamstring holds up, they can win it all. The Nets entered the 2021 playoffs not just as contenders, but as favorites. Expectations weren't just high, they were sky high. The Brooklyn Nets entered the 2021 playoffs with a target on their backs. As the East's powerhouse team, everyone was watching, waiting to see if the Big Three could finally deliver the championship Brooklyn craved. First up, the Boston Celtics. A tough but winnable matchup. And the Nets made it look easy. The Big Three were finally healthy and firing on all cylinders. The offense flowed seamlessly. Durant scoring, Kyrie's dazzling handles, Harden's playmaking. It was a show of dominance. The Celtics were swept aside in 5 games, a smooth and decisive series victory that only fueled the Nets' confidence. But the real test awaited. Eastern Conference semifinals. The Milwaukee Bucks. The stage was set for an epic battle. Many dubbed it the real East Final before it even started. The Bucks were no strangers to pressure, led by the unstoppable force that was Giannis Antetokounmpo and the steady clutch shooting of Chris Middleton. Game 1. A nightmare start. Less than a minute into the game, James Harden pulled his hamstring, a devastating blow. But in true Warrior fashion, the Nets rallied. They ground out a win despite Harden's early exit, showing resilience and grit. Game 2. Brooklyn came out swinging, dismantling the Bucks in a blowout that had fans dreaming of a sweep. But then the tide turned. Giannis and Middleton answered back with ferocity. Game 3 belonged to Milwaukee, the Bucks proving they wouldn't back down. Then came the cruel twist of fate in Game 4. Kyrie Irving, the team's electric point guard, twisted his ankle in a brutal moment that ended his playoff run instantly.
Without Kyrie's magic on the court and with Harden sidelined, Brooklyn's advantage evaporated. The series was suddenly tied 2-2.
Game 5, the return of Harden, but not at full strength. Despite being limited, Harden battled through the pain, but the real story was Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant delivered a playoff performance for the ages: 49 points, 17 rebounds, and 10 assists. An epic triple-double while playing every single minute of the game. The Nets took a crucial 5-2 lead, seemingly poised to close out the series. Game 6. Middleton, however, was unstoppable. His clutch shots and defense forced a decisive Game 7. The scene was electric in Brooklyn. The tension was palpable. The hopes of a city rested on the shoulders of Durant, Harden, and a partially healthy squad. Game 7, the heartbreak. Durant was magnificent again, dropping 48 points in a near superhuman effort. In the final possession, with the Nets down by 2, the ball was in Kevin Durant's hands. He spun, released a shot, and scored. The arena exploded in jubilation. But then came the replay. Durant's foot was on the three-point line. The basket counted only as 2 points. The game was tied. Overtime ensued. Fatigued and exhausted, Durant could not carry Brooklyn to victory alone. The Bucks seized the momentum, winning the game and the series. The aftermath was a bitter pill to swallow. The best team on paper, though fractured and incomplete, failed to claim the crown. A single inch, a single moment separated the Nets from NBA glory, and that moment became the symbol of what the team would always be remembered for: the greatest what if in recent basketball history. The 2021-22 NBA season dawned with a glimmer of hope for the Brooklyn Nets and their fans. After the crushing defeat to the Bucks, the team was determined to bounce back stronger. Kevin Durant looked recharged and ready to lead the charge. James Harden was finally healthy again, and the chemistry between the duo seemed promising. But the third pillar of the Big Three, Kyrie Irving, remained a complicated figure. Kyrie's COVID-19 vaccine refusal still barred him from playing in home games at the Barclays Center due to New York's strict health mandates. This restriction fractured the team's cohesion and strategy. Kyrie played only road games, forcing the Nets to adapt constantly to a shifting lineup. The imbalance was glaring, but Durant and Harden stepped up to carry the load. The team began the season with high expectations, but the cracks quickly showed. In January, Kevin Durant suffered an injury, forcing him to miss crucial games. Without Durant's scoring and leadership on the floor, Harden was left to shoulder an overwhelming burden. The results were devastating. The Nets suffered 11 straight losses, a streak that left fans and analysts shocked. Harden's frustration was obvious. The weight of the team was crushing, and the lack of support on the court was palpable. Then came a seismic shakeup. In a blockbuster trade that sent shockwaves across the league, James Harden was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. The Big 3 experiment, which had been built with such immense expectation and fanfare, had lasted less than 2 years. Even more tellingly, the three stars had only played 16 games together as a complete trio, far too few to build the chemistry and dominance everyone had hoped for. The remainder of the season blurred into disappointment. The Nets entered the playoffs with low momentum and morale, and their fate was sealed swiftly. They were swept by the Boston Celtics in the first round, a painful reminder of unfinished business and Boston's revenge for their previous playoff loss. The 2022-23 NBA season was the final chapter in this tumultuous saga. Steve Nash, who had been hired as head coach amid great optimism, was fired early in the season as the team struggled to find stability. Kyrie Irving, once again embroiled in controversies off the court, requested a trade, further destabilizing the franchise. Not long after, Kevin Durant followed suit, wanting a fresh start away from the drama and disappointments that had come to define Brooklyn. In February 2023, the breakup was official. Kyrie was traded to the Dallas Mavericks, and Durant was shipped off to the Phoenix Suns. The Big Three, once the hope for a new NBA dynasty, was no more. What remained was a stark realization. The dream of a Brooklyn dynasty, so full of promise, had turned to dust. The Big Three era in Brooklyn was remembered not for its victories, but for its failures, injuries, and what-ifs. The legacy of the Brooklyn Nets' Big Three era is a complicated one. On paper, their combined talent was extraordinary. They had three of the NBA's most prolific scorers and playmakers on one roster, a recipe that should have led to championships and dominance. Yet, in reality, the full trio only shared the court in 16 games. Out of those games, they managed 13 wins, an impressive win rate that only deepened the disappointment because it showed their potential was real but painfully underutilized. The story of this team is not just about the numbers, though. It's about the injuries that kept key players sidelined for extended periods, the personal drama that disrupted locker room chemistry, the lack of consistency in their lineups, and, some argue, a lack of full commitment to a shared vision. From Kyrie Irving's controversial absences to Harden's frustrations and Durant's injuries, the obstacles piled up one after another. Because of all these factors, this Brooklyn Nets team will not be remembered as one of the great dynasties in NBA history. Instead, it is remembered as one of the greatest Kevin Durant what-ifs. Kevin Durant, the legacy here is not about what they won, but what they could have won. A constant source of Kevin Durant, what might have been, for fans, analysts, and the players themselves. This team became a symbol of shattered dreams, of wasted potential, and of a basketball dynasty that never came to fruition. The Big Three were meant to bring a new era of Brooklyn dominance, but instead they left behind a cautionary tale about the fragile nature of team building, health, and chemistry. Now we want to hear from you. Was this the biggest failure of a Big Three in NBA history? Or was it just an unlucky combination of circumstances? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Brooklyn Nets' rise and fall, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into NBA stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time for more basketball stories and insights. Big hug.